The baby boom.
Babies all over the map.
The post-World War II rise of the middle class had produced a huge number of babies, the largest generation in world history. All of these young people had been causing a huge overcrowding before Sputnik, and schools had been straining to the breaking point.
Your child's school nearly doubled its enrollment.
The result? Classroom shortage.
There weren't enough classrooms and desks.
They gave my boy half a seat.
To give every student some kind of education, many schools had resorted to teaching kids in shifts.
Not too bad.
Students sat at their desks for just 2 hours and then went home. And other students replaced them at those same desks, up to 4 times a day. Classes met wherever there was room, even in barber shops. The baby boomers were stressing the entire system, but this was hardest on the teachers. Overworked and underpaid, just when we needed more of them, many teachers were quitting.
With deep regret, I hereby submit my resignation as a teacher in the school system for the forthcoming year for reasons.
Teachers tried to keep control of classrooms of 30 to 60 students and were forced to spend more and more of their time just being disciplinarians.
Keeping discipline had become one of the biggest chores of the crowded classroom.
Mike, Fred.
And those that persevered resorted to teaching their huge classes of students by rote.
And so, to control the crowd, to hold their attention, Miss Roberts was forced to return to whole group instruction, teaching the mass instead of the individual, teaching by rote.
1, 2, 3, 4. Put your feet on the floor. 1, 2.
Teaching no longer stimulating to the pupils or the teacher.
The slow learners aren't getting the attention they need, and the bright ones are bored.
And it gets worse every day. But for the time being, we've got to live with it, doing the best job we can.
Even if it's a bad job?
All we can do for the present is try the best we know how.
To leave no stone unturned in our self-examination, leaders traveled to Russia to look at their educational system, to see what they were doing that was different. What we found shocked us.
30 years ago, we had 6 times as many scientists and engineers as the Soviet Union. Now their colleges are turning out twice as many technical people this year as ours are.
In the Soviet time, the science was a priority in the society. It was not a movie star, it was not the rich man, it was no rich man there, it was you have to be scientist.
We learned that Russian kids went to school 6 days a week, that their school year was 213 days long compared to 180 days in America, that every Russian kid, boy and girl, was required to take math and engineering. Russian students had up to 4 hours of homework a night, where the average in America was just 30 minutes.
The top-notch minds are attracted to the physical sciences and mathematics. Their skills are so highly valued that no expense is spared in providing them with excellent technical facilities.
Take something like the Russian satellite to put the finger on what's wrong with our education.
We need scientists, we need technicians, we need mathematicians. There's no doubt about that.
The community's awake now. I think they're going to try to do something. They're all excited about science and math. I mean, it's been taken for granted for so long. Now, suddenly, it's back in the spotlight again.
Education was in the spotlight, and the lessons we took away from the Soviet system were plain and simple.
We got to do something, and we need an educated population in science to be able to do this. And it was like somebody slammed on the accelerator, and all of a sudden, everything was open for discussion and examination.
We've come face to face with the realization that schools and survival are inseparable.
The time has come for a change.
We have to reorganize our schools.
Within just months of the failure of Vanguard, America began to do something remarkable, something that few other nations would have been capable of. We began to come together, to become unified in our determination to fix what was broken.
We don't have an adequate education program in any of our schools.
Are you satisfied? Are you really satisfied that your school and your community is doing all that it can do for these youth?
Thousands of children are getting a shoddy education. The time has come for America to realize that our citadel now is the intelligence, imagination, and curiosity of the trained mind.
The American people must improve their public schools to make the nation strong, to meet whatever threat may come.
Each citizen should do what he can to strengthen American education, to make the position and prestige of the teacher understood in the community. This I think they can do and they must do.
We were on a national mission, a mission that is today referred to as the Sputnik Moment.
The search for an education which will develop the full potentiality of every boy and girl.
We had to find the resources to pay teachers, and we needed to enlist more of them. The number of students per class had to be reduced. More buildings had to be built. And the techniques teachers used to teach kids had to change radically. And change they did.
Yes, Jack, the vacation will soon be over, and you'll be going back to school.
When students returned to their schools in the fall of 1958, what they found was very different from what had been there before. The pressure was on. Americans were redesigning their entire educational system and asking students to take their studies much more seriously for the defense of the country.
We used to laugh and say, well, you know, the Russians might have launched Sputnik, but the United States is launching us, because of all of these new programs that were in the school, and we all just jumped into it.
It was just like an avalanche, because the response of the United States was to institute this huge science and technology enrichment program.
In every classroom and in every course of study, a focus on science, engineering, and math was being encouraged.
Science is fun. It helps you to learn, to know, and to appreciate. In the study of science is found the most useful and satisfying knowledge of man.
People were encouraged to take physics and geometry and chemistry.
And there was an immense importance placed on this, almost a stigma if you were going into those things.
An atmosphere which removes the egghead stigma. Scholastic achievement is now recognized and respected by both students and adults.
How do I get high grades? I work for them. I'm not going to school just to put in time. I want to be somebody.
And it was all heavy-duty, college prep, mathematically based. We're going to train scientists. And the curriculum went that way. The courses became very difficult. It was a revolution. It's going to be tough.
We were just loaded down with all kinds of books and new classes and homework.
For many years, I've just been able to drift through school. I never did homework until my junior year in high school, and then all of a sudden I was hit with this, and it sort of rocked me.
It used to be, I could get through chemistry and physics. You know, you could slide through. The coach will let me through. But it wasn't that way anymore. All of a sudden it was like they were looking for something.
What did you get in chemistry?
I had a 79.
Holy mackerel, you gotta get those grades up. You expect to go to college? What are you gonna major in?
I hope to major in science.
science, and with the grades that you've been getting in science, listen, Ted, is football interfering with your studying?
Oh, I hope not, Bruce.
You must have those grades up, definitely. It's either studies and football or just studies alone.
Sports mattered less. Science mattered more.
Why study science? Study science because you and Betty and the Nancys and Bills and Joes and Janes all over the country will find in the study of science a richer, more rewarding life.
The National Science Foundation came out with a whole science and math program. There were enrichment classes for mathematics and physics and chemistry, and I was just caught up with all that.
Science had been defined with a small s. In biology, this meant dissecting frogs. In mathematics, learning a series of equations. The same with physics. Now, science was broadening. In every area of study, a focus on science was becoming a critical part of what students had to learn.
So that you can heal the sick, so that you can build the bridges and buildings and highways of tomorrow, so that you can teach, inspire, and encourage those who come after you. All these and more require a basic knowledge of science.
A course that boys took, shop, had changed. Here's how it was.
It's fun to do things that come out right.
Here's what it became.
Here, the task is to build a transformer and test its application to electromagnetic principles.
A course that girls took, home economics, had changed. Here's how it was.
At home, it would be a minor tragedy.
Here's what it became.
In home economics, the girls plan nutritious and economical menus. Arranging different food budgets, they check price lists in newspaper advertisements.
Educators were changing the basic ways that students learned.
We're attempting to find out how to use teachers best, most effectively in the classrooms.
Students who previously learned by repetition and memorization were being pushed to think for themselves.
A good teacher challenging students to think for themselves.
Individualized studies now demanded work at home that took more time and concentration. Parents were telling their children that it was each student's responsibility to grow into a useful adult, to become an engineer, a scientist, a mathematician, or doctor. And finally, women were being encouraged to become scientists.
Judy Messer, future lab technician. Mary Lewis, she likes science, and who knows? Celia Mortimer, fascinated by nuclear physics and hopes to make it a career.
Now it seemed to be important to be a scientist or an engineer and get in on all this work that was going on.
Today, students carry their interest in science lessons beyond
More and more teenagers are passing up rock and roll for a rocket roll.
At Camp A.P. Hill, Virginia, the Army plays host to some guest rocket experts, amateurs, teenagers all. More than 100 high school boys showed up on the firing range with rockets designed and built by themselves.
Rocket boys, as they were called, to beat the Russians, were going to try and build and launch homemade rockets.
I started mixing my own homemade rocket fuel. My mother was very supportive of my experiments. She gave me a piece of her vacuum cleaner extension, and I had some fins that I cut out of sheet metal, welded to these things. I made nozzles out of plaster of Paris and would take them out into the desert and launch these things. They really weren't rockets, they were pipe bombs with fins. It's amazing I didn't kill myself. They were very, very dangerous. But I was just completely fascinated and was doing my best to get rockets as high as I possibly could. I had 2-stage rockets. My goal was to get a rocket into the stratosphere if I could. This is one of my early rocket experiments. Notice the plaster of Paris bulkhead, welded steel fins, plaster of Paris nozzle.
I gathered in some friends that had been my friends all my whole life, and we decided we're going to form a club called the Big Creek Missile Agency, and we're going to build rockets. We had absolutely no clue on how to do this. We started to really research rockets. We read everything we possibly could. Our teacher, Miss Riley, got involved, and she got us a book called Principles of Guided Missile Design, which required a working knowledge of calculus and differential equations, and I was having trouble with algebra at the time. We blew up a lot of things. We dodged a lot of shrapnel. Ultimately, we ended up building professional-style rockets that were flying literally miles into the sky. We just felt someday what we were doing was going to help the United States to be #1 in space. We wanted our country to catch up with the Russians, and then we wanted to just keep on going forever.
The Sputnik moment was provoking amazing changes. And one of the most important changes took place when Congress, pushed by Americans of all stripes, provided a massive increase in funding. Science, math, and engineering education would receive an infusion of more than $1 billion, with huge amounts of financial aid provided for scholarships so that students could attend colleges and graduate schools.
The government put tremendous amount of money into revamping the physics and chemistry, and the new texts came out, the new courses came out, lab manuals, all paid for by the government.
And a whole series of national scholarships were announced, and money was flowing into universities for the purpose of getting kids into that arena, and I was one of the fortunate ones.
The new law was called the National Defense Education Act. The name made clear the connection that everyone felt. Education was critical to our national defense.
We can no longer depend on air power, whether it be bombers or guided missiles. We must depend on brain power. We must depend on the ability of our educational institutions to cultivate that brain power so that it may be used as well as it possibly can be.
Through the years, we've taken education for granted, have even grown neglectful. All around us, things have been changing, and now, suddenly, schools have a lot to do with national security and our survival. Now there's trouble. And we realize that the trouble is with brains and training and technology.
If this nation should unfortunately be called upon to defend itself, the real front-line soldier would be the scientist with the test tube and the Geiger counter.
The National Defense Education Act created thousands of high school science laboratories with tools that went way beyond the traditional microscope.
By the use of a videotape recorder and a kinescope, we are able to provide many film clips, many kinds of materials that are just not available to the classroom teacher.
New funding brought television to the classroom. And television brought the world to students and connected students to the world.
Involvement, interest, judge for yourself. These boys are at Cape Canaveral, helping with the countdown of another rocket. The excitement heightens. But a clever science teacher has turned this program into a lesson in propulsion, gravity, and atmospherics.
Language labs utilizing electronic apparatus and modern theories of learning are especially important.
Gone were the studies of Latin and Greek. In addition to French and German, new language laboratories now taught Russian and Chinese.
Universities which had never taught Russian before were encouraged to institute Russian courses. And in that first year after 1957, there were more people applying to learn Russian in this country than I'd ever seen before.
The Sputnik moment had provoked an amazing time in America. Thanks to the National Defense Education Act scholarships, millions of men and women went to college to study scientific and technical courses. They went on to attack problems and uncover opportunities in every area of life. And they initiated American-led revolutions in electronics, computer science, psychology, environmental and earth sciences, and they created and built the Internet.
The idea of building this network and being able to share resources and to interact with each other remotely and get programs to talk to each other was enormously fascinating. It was very exciting.
Newspapers, magazines, mail, and messages will be sent through the air at lightning speed and reproduced in the home.
The space race that began with Sputnik ended in July 1969 when Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin landed on the moon. America had caught up and won. That race was now over. But what about today? And more importantly, tomorrow? Is there another Sputnik waiting for us ahead? Perhaps just around the corner? Or perhaps, is it already here? Today, in many ways, America again leads the world. But as the old saying goes, those who do not remember history are bound to repeat its mistakes. It pays for us to reconsider the Sputnik moment and how every American felt a need to take personal responsibility and to act.